Hi everyone, I want to do a short video today about a new D&D game that I'm setting up and my plans for it. I'm going to be doing a fairly traditional kind of game in the sense of system-wise. I'm going to be using what I generally prefer to use, which is kind of a hybrid form of BX D&D and BCMI, with dribs and drabs sort of dragged in from wherever I need to. The reason I'm using that system is because it's what I'm most comfortable with. It's what I'm most familiar with. There's various other systems that I've been pretty interested in recently, stylistically, but at the end of the day, it comes down to utility for me. And I have a pretty off-the-cuff style of play at the table, and I'm most happy when I'm improvising and when my players are improvising as well. So I want something that I can kind of manipulate at ease. I've never been a systems guy. I've never been a very granular stat block kind of game master. I want the basics, and I want options, myriad options. And I tend to do a lot of prep, but it's not in producing stat blocks, let's put it that way. And I guess the topic really for the video that I'm doing is what is the D&D landscape, and why, to me, that sense of the physical reality of that world, or unreality of that world, being what I'm most interested in as a game master, because that's what I'm trying to penetrate into. That's the place I want to go to, and I don't want to have to work to convince players that that's where I am, that that's where I'm coming from, that that's where these events are occurring. I just want that to kind of manifest organically in the same way that it would were I describing a story about something that happened to me on the weekend. Definitely, for me, I've been running games for 35 years and playing fairly avidly, and I'm still just as obsessed as I've ever been. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere, my fascination with these games. And to me, like with many things, you talk to someone who has had experiences with drugs, they'll tell you about intense first impressions, and that becoming, I guess, problematic in terms of their expectations with continuing to do that. And I don't know whether tabletop gaming is problematic in the same way. I've always seen it as a fairly harmless addiction, personally. But there's kind of the same principle applying, which is there's certain key events that happened to me in early in my gaming career that made me that made such a huge impression on me in terms of wanting to keep doing this. And I've spent a lot of time, reflecting on what that is, like what exactly was it about those experiences. And I'm kind of interested in the answers that I came up with, because I keep bringing it back to a particular war game that I played once, like a hex-based, counter-based, I think it was simulation of Napoleon in Russia, and just a series of fraught encounters on a ridge, and the huge impression that it made on my friend and I as we were playing this out, because it didn't seem to be a key area of the battle. It didn't seem to be, I guess, much of note beforehand, but it was just really interesting. How a series of dice rolls manifested this theatre of the mind kind of communication between he and I about what our opposing forces were doing on this ridge, and us sort of intensely visualizing the carnage and this sort of heroic stand over this kind of futile ridge of secondary importance in this particular battle. And it made such a big impression on me, because, this was just a game. I wasn't there seeking it was a war game. I wasn't there seeking the same kind of immersion that I do from a role-playing session. And yet, on some really intense level, I could see what was happening. And, my friend could as well, like we had this shared, like I said, theatre of the mind experience. And a lot of it was about the map and the landscape, and us kind of looking at these weird little sort of icons and playing pieces and numbers and graphs, and that transforming into this intense experience. And I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but perhaps you can see what I'm getting at. That's kind of the magic that you're after in gaming, that unexpected escape to another place that can even happen at, insignificant moments in a game if everyone's in just the right frame of mind. But to me, the landscape is the key to that. And I don't know whether it's partly my visual sense. I know creatively, I tend to be a fairly city-bound person, and I don't often get the opportunity to go into the countryside. When I was a kid, I sort of lived in the country for a while, and that was important to me, and I think it made a big impression on my imagination as a child, which has never gone away. So I still find that, I'll go on a drive in the country and suddenly feel like writing, because my imagination is sparked by a vista, like what's over that hill. I wonder what's in that wood. Have people been there? Have people never been there? And that, really, that's kind of the same thing that I'm doing when I'm setting up a game. I kind of run a sandbox to some extent. My idea is to get my players into a situation where they've invested with a place and the stories and events that are going on locally in that region. And I know my style at the table is, I tend to describe the place by means of the landscape, and I tend to try and visually take the players on a journey through the landscape, even if I'm having a character describe to them what's going on. And so I spend hours and hours and hours working on maps and kind of ruminating and reflecting on just that experience that I have when I go into the landscape myself, and sort of doing the same thing as a game master. Here's some hills, here's some broken land, here's some open land near a river. Are there farms there? What do they grow? What sort of lurks in the wood nearby, and so on. And I think that, if you can kind of go there imaginatively enough, often enough, during preparation, that just vastly beats reading. I actually run. I haven't really managed to produce fully my own kind of sandbox setting. I've done that in dribs and drabs. I tend to do a hybrid game of someone else's setting and what I'm bringing into it from other places and adventures that I've made up on my own, and most of it ends up being what the players choose to do and the repercussions of that. But yeah, kind of losing my train of thought. Hopefully getting something across about just, I think what I was trying to say there was you can have a detailed setting, and if it's really well written, you might get something similar to what I'm talking about out of that and be able to bring that to the table, and that's great. But to me, I really feel like in some way imaginatively I need to visit and revisit the landscape, the setting, the places of note in my game world, to just be able to kind of get what I'm wanting at the table. Like, I can pick up a game and run an adventure without any trouble. I can run a Saturday night special with no preparation. That's all fine, but it's not kind of what I'm talking about with long-term setting and this kind of a round table manifestation of the landscape that I think has been the thing that's most invested my players. Because the idea is you want your players to be coming back and desiring to be transported to your game world again. And there's, I'm sure, a million ways that you can do that. But for me, getting engrossed with the physicality of the monuments and the vistas of your game settings, landscape, that's really key for me. Anyway, I'll leave it there. That's just some thoughts about that. And bye.